Well, many ag operations employ farm workers and take a number of steps to enhance employee safety and minimize potential legal problems. But what's the extent of their liability exposure? Roger McEowen with the Washburn School of Law has some perspective on this. So tell us, first of all, Roger, we'll start out, and good morning to you. Thank you, as always, of course, for being here. Always a pleasure. What are some of the basics that people need to keep in mind here?
Well, good to be with you, Suzanne. Employment creates a legal relationship, and that's the key point in all of this. And one of the things that an employer must do is provide a safe workplace and keep it maintained for the employee. And if you just think about that in an ag setting, that can be really difficult because a lot of the work is out in the open. You're exposed to the weather and the conditions, and you're working around livestock that don't always operate in a predictable manner. So it's not like operating a machine or working from a desk in an office. So that's difficult for farm employers, and the employer also has to set reasonable rules for employee conduct.
Well, I know you covered a case, or actually, talked about this case in Texas. It was last year, right? Involving a death stemming from an ATV accident. So what happened with this one?
Well, you're right. It was a Texas case, and it did occur last year. And there was a young man that was killed while riding an ATV driven by the teenage son of a farming operations employee. So it wasn't the employee's son. It was a friend of the employee's son that was killed. The accident occurred off the farm premises while the two teenage boys were on a fishing excursion and decided they wanted to try to do donuts in the mud, and it flipped. And unfortunately, the one teenager was killed. And the farm owner was sued for wrongful death, and also that was based on negligent entrustment of the ATV to the employee, and hence his son then. And both the trial court and the appellate court disagreed. They said, no, there was no negligent entrustment because there wasn't a special relationship between the ATV driver and the farm. He was not an employee. The accident occurred while the ATV was being used for personal purposes off the farm premises. It was not being used for business purposes. And the court also pointed out that the farm owner didn't know or have reason to know that the employee's son was an unlicensed driver or wasn't capable of handling an ATV. So
this kid unfortunately lost his life, but he really kind of took matters into his own hands, taking that ATV without a license and doing it off farm. So the lesson here, what should people learn from this?
Well, understand that when you hire people, it does create a legal relationship. And so you want to make sure that you're careful to train employees on usage of farm equipment and machinery and vehicles. And it's a good idea to put a written guide together for usage of those items in an employee handbook. Get something down in writing and address issues such as off-farm use and use by family members of employees. And I'd say also make sure your liability insurance is adequate and get a thorough review of what the policy does and does not cover.
Always great advice. Roger, thank you so much for joining us. Pleasure. Roger McEowen with the Washburn School of Law. Roger, thank you again.